Sorry, everyone. Hello, online people. So yeah, just a catch up. This is a workshop on the data flow from recording to the use of the data. So we're just talking about where people submit their records. And so our record is a great option of other recording apps. So a few people that say I don't, which we would encourage them to do. It's a great hobby. It helps us as well. We'll make all of these available after. So keep going. So we've got a couple of societies there, so Mammal Society and the NHS. They all make their way to GiGL. And the Great Butterfly Camp. So all these different, and there are a lot of different ways do end up feeding into us. So plenty more, but we'll carry on to the next point. So as well as those that we just mentioned, and the iRecord and the online ways, less so now during COVID, but beforehand we had loads of different ways of format. So before I left my desk in 2019, that was on there. It probably still is. Hopefully someone's not cleared it up. But that was what was left of the Orpington Field project, which we finished in 2018, very luckily. But we've had hundreds of paper records and of notebooks, of our pressings and some really lovely drawings. We get letters, we get reports. We currently run our Zooniverse project, which is bird records. And that card there is a great example. We've had, I think currently we're on the 60s, we've done the 80s and 70s and 50s. We've had about 15,000 different volunteers from all across the world on that project. And it kind of shows there's no limit to how you can record. If you don't have access to one of the previous ones that you've already mentioned, you can send us in letters, you can send us in notebooks, and we're more than happy to sit down and work on it. Although I do appreciate if the Excel spreadsheet is a bit more organized. So some of the challenges we do get from data and from data input. When it comes from an example of iRecord, you can attach your own licenses to it. As a record center, we prefer open access licenses. This is so we can use them for our partners. We go for a CC BY, so a Creative Commons by attribution license. But we do tend to sometimes get restricted licenses. Now that's fine. We still collect them, we still use data internally, but we can't use it for our partners. So the records that you're submitting might not do the good they possibly could do if you go for a more Creative Commons open license. We sometimes get issues with reference systems. So we tend to advise to use the TQ with reference systems that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. But our online recording form is open to any good reference. So we sometimes get eastings and northings and postcodes. Again, they're all good. We can use them, but references are TQ are ideal. Especially when it comes to some of the apps like iRecord and in the previous word cloud, sending it to loads of different sites. So they're great, but it does sometimes create some extra work and duplication. So we're working on processes of fixing that, so we don't end up getting 15 of the same record from the same person from the same time. If it's a different record, that's brilliant, but we don't want to over-represent what's actually out there. And then in very rare cases, handwriting. We have some handwriting experts at GiGL, but even I struggled with this one a very long time. So this is an issue we have with our university. The volunteers sometimes spend hours reading individual slides. So you can really only kind of have the best guess when it comes to handwriting. But luckily, that's slowly phasing out and we get more standard types and Excel. So once the record gets to us, however it gets to us, and we've digitized it, we have a validation process. So we have our manual processes, which is usually me or Victoria or Linz, who's our community manager. we'll check that the data is spelled correctly, that the grid references make sense. We've had examples in the past, especially with the Orpington Field project that I've mentioned, where we've had sites that being from Kent I know of, but grid references when they're put onto sites that are not in Kent. So they're Orpington majority, they don't like I'm recording in Kent, but when you see a grid reference in Scotland, you know there's something wrong. But it's stuff like that we can check and work out through. So once we've done those manual checks, we can't check all the data. We quite regularly get bird records from the London Natural Society, which is hundreds of thousands of records, and we just don't have the time to check each one. So our automated checks on our Recorder 6 software picks up any spelling mistakes of species, picks up any dates and grid reference issues, and it allows us to run an automated check, which ensures that a species does exist in our dictionary, and it's not something that someone's made up. So we try and get rid of those as early as possible. So that's mainly our two validation checks. Our second stage of making sure our data is accurate as possible is for our verification. So we have a lovely team of verifiers. They are usually county recorders, and we send them our data. Our data, and they are happy to look through it and send it back to us with one of the states on the left. So whether it's an accepted record or it's correct. So if the recorder was there at the present time, it's considered correct, which means it's most likely to be correct. They weren't there to confirm it, but that species should exist in that location at that time. And then we have our not accepted. So in the past, I've had blue jay records on the Frame Valley, which excited as I was, is not realistic. So that would be an incorrect record. Or if, for example, we had beaver records, if that was to happen, we'd have to have someone there to verify it, because we know they possibly could, but we're not sure. This is mainly where our unconfirmed comes from. So there's possibility a beaver could come up with Thames, but unless we have someone there to confirm it and some photos are a great example, then it will stay as unconfirmed. So just a quick chance on your phones or apps or pieces to ask any questions about the verification process. We're going to try and pick 3 questions from this. Anyone that aren't answered will stay on the presentation, and I will get back to anyone in allow. So the first one, what is the difference between validation and verification? So validation is checking that a record has the appropriate attributes to it. So it's not questioning the without using the word validity, it's not questioning the accuracy of the record, just that the record is proper. So we'll check that spelling is correct. We won't question whether the record is an accurate record. So with the blue jay example, we'll make sure blue jay is spelled correctly, but then the verification would be saying no, that blue jay can't exist there. So it's very much a looking at the data without ground truthing, and then moving on to a ground truthing process on our verification. So we'll allow any time for any more questions. So at GiGL, any records that a recorder sends in to us, we will then send back to them on request. So if a recorder is unsure on the validity of a record, we'll send it through our process, send it through our validation verification process, and then if they want feedback from that record, they want to know whether it's been verified by an expert, we are more than happy to supply that with the attached verification process. One of the big issues we have with our verification at the moment is we don't have experts for every species. So if anyone out there wants to take part and start verifying for us, we're more than happy to take whatever your species is. Spiders is a big issue at the moment. It tends to be the less well recorded species. So we've got thyme, we've got butterflies and moths, but it's stuff like spiders and invertebrates, and the less recorded groups. So we'll go for one question. Or someone has a license for a species, expertise, etc. Should they add that info somewhere? Yes. So with all our submissions on the GiGL form, and I think this is the case if I record as well, and obviously in any other medium you wish to record, there's comments, so you can add additional comments. You can say this record was verified by an expert. Name the expert, then it's more than likely we'll know someone who knows that person, and we can verify that. So an example is if any data that comes from the Natural History Society from the NHS, we take as already verified because we know they're experts, and they're more than likely to be the people who verify our data anyway. We're not best popular if we then send back their own data. So it's much better that we just take it as being verified. Okay, so we've got 3 more questions. They'll stay on there, and we'll send out with an answer pack. So I'm going to hand over to Victoria, who will talk about the latter stages of the life of a record.
Oh, so this slide, I'm going to talk about aggregation, curation, and storage all as one kind of big go, because they represent different stages of the NBN, the National Biodiversity Network's data flow process. But realistically, when we're working at GiGL, we tend to lump different stages together within the community team who's responsible for most of the species records. So when we're talking about aggregation, that's, as Ben mentioned, getting our records from the different sources that we can, with the different challenges that are associated with them. For example, some of the recording apps, there are difficulties in getting some of those records due to some of the licensing issues. And curation largely refers to the addition of like the metadata that goes with your actual record. So it's just like a little bit more information that is quite useful to, I guess, it falls within the FairBased Principles, which is what I'm going to come on to. But it's important to know kind of, in addition to the where and the what and the when that you saw, the kind of more of the context of how you saw it. So if it's like a systematic survey, or if it's one that was an ad hoc kind of record, it's useful to have some gauge of the frequency with which these like kind of recordings are being done. And so that's where we'll add on any extra information that we can get when we're processing and adding the records to our database. And storage, that refers to the database that we use. So we use Recorder 6, which is an open access platform, as far as I'm aware, and one that is gradually being updated as people are reaching the capacity which Recorder 6 can manage. So the little diagram on the left is just showing different routes that we get data, and then the different levels with which local environmental record centres operate. So there's GiGL, which is on the local level, National Biodiversity Network, which is on the wider level, and with which I have forgotten what they stand for. But they all follow the FairBased Principles, which is a bit of, it's becoming more ingrained within, I think, kind of recording culture, to make sure that data is so it's findable, that it's accessible, that it's interoperable, and it's reusable. So it doesn't exactly mean that the data is open and that anyone can access it wherever, because that kind of undermines the role of a record centre and the ability to maintain good records and make sure that you're not getting duplications and things like that. But it does mean that like through the appropriate channels, you can access data. So if you request data through GiGL, then we're very happy to share it with you. As long as it's not a species that we can't really tell you where they are. The interoperability refers to the fact that lots of different systems that different people use when kind of looking and studying records, and so it's a bit useless if one of those systems doesn't work with the others. And then the reusability, just making sure that the data has enough like metadata associated with it, that it has like a long-term usefulness, because I guess, yeah, in some instances, you can get records that they don't, it's hard to say, but they don't stand the test of time, I guess, if they don't come with like, yeah, the necessary metadata that goes with it. And then, yeah, it's just a little bit more about the FairBased Principles, which, so it's taken from this, I think this is the first paper that kind of set them out systematically, which, yeah, I wouldn't bother taking it in, but there's all this information is also found within the delegate pack. There's a data flow process that will take you through it in a bit more detail as well. So yeah, just before we're going to talk about the uses of data, which have obviously been covered quite extensively today, just a little bit more information about the people who would want to access the data, specifically the data that GiGL holds, because those people's intentions obviously affect how it is used. So generally we divide GiGL stakeholders into partners and clients, partners representing a more long-term and sustained relationship. So generally it's the relationship that we have with the different London boroughs and Thames Water and some of the larger recording groups. And so they both send us data and receive it back, as well as other information and outputs, and some of the things that Eleni talked about within her talk. And then the clients generally represent a more one-off project or plan that GiGL data was required for. And while that can ultimately turn into a more like long-term and fruitful partnership, it generally is from students who are interested. I mean, so most recently, a lot of students have been approaching GiGL about Greenspace and open space data for given how COVID has affected everyone mentally and both physically. There's a lot of interest about how that data is being used, and similar to what Dr. Sarah Knight had talked about earlier. There's also researchers doing similar things, and yeah, just generally anyone who is interested in data and wants to submit data to us. Yeah, and so then finally come to data uses. Obviously, we have many great examples of today, but I guess it's not just the conservation that we're interested in, it's also in sustainable development through like using the GiGL data search system that enables planning applications to like appropriately use and understand like the species and site data that's available to them to make sustainable decisions. It's also about educating and engaging people with, you know, their local and the wider wildlife around them. And I guess finally on the uses, it's really good for you. I really enjoy going out and recording. Find it a very immersive experience, as I'm sure many of you here do as well. So I guess with that, just one more question. So, I mean, given everything that you've learned today or everything that you already knew, what do you think your records may be used for? So what if you submit your records to GiGL? Okay. Yeah. Yeah, the atlas is a great. Policy is probably a little bit trickier, given that it's quite a long-term process, and one that doesn't always consider the environment, I suppose. But there are a lot of ideas. Wow. Yeah. So I mean, a lot of these are useful both to have the records that exist over a sustained period of time, like the atlases, and for general conservation projects, but also the ones that are just reliant upon like baseline data as is at the site. So many.
Just one point as well. I think we've really hit it on the head that conservation research and planning are three of the main uses of our data. So research obviously will help inform planning. Hopefully planning and research end up conserving something. We've been involved in some really brilliant conservation projects. The beaver talk earlier, the previous project we were involved with them was reintroducing water bowls into Kingston. And it's great to see our data that we hold and that so many people have submitted to us really making a difference and helping make decisions. And that's really what GiGL was for. It's to increase and improve the knowledge of our partners and help inform decisions in a more greener and biodiverse way. So, someone's already put there. So yeah, so lastly, we've got a few questions on data uses.
So,
what is the value of plausible records and how are they processed? So, unless a record is listed as incorrect, it will still go towards our data exchanges for our partners. Obviously, the weight of a correct confirmed record are better, but it doesn't discredit the record in any way. It's more of an indication. So, if for example there was a plausible black bat roost, then it would advise the planning authority or whoever involved in that particular case to go and look deeper into it. So it's never discarded unless it is confirmed as incorrect, but it will prompt the developer to really look into it and hopefully eventually turn it into a confirmed record. That's an interesting question. In short, no. Data doesn't flow easily both directions. We work with the NBN. Our CEO Mandy is also chair of him on the board of the NBN. So we have a good working relationship. There are some discussions on how open data should be between general record centres and the NBN. There are certain record centres from Bristol who are very big proponents of it, but it's sort of a difficult flow at the moment. But we definitely do work together, because that's kind of answered it in a diplomatic way. Okay, last question of the day. The size species combination is sensitive. How secure are the records? So we have a 25-year history of dealing with records. As GiGL was our predecessor at the Wildlife Trust Recording Project, and we follow an example of co-working with the NBN. We follow their guidance on sensitive records. So, example that we've come across recently and have been working on for quite a while is the peregrine data. So all peregrine data, following the NBN's advice, is to 10K resolution. We obviously follow GDPR in terms of sharing data. So we have private recorder names and private location details. If we need to, we share at an appropriate resolution. So we don't make sensitive sites, or for example nests, we don't make them public information. We have extensive licensing agreements with our partners and clients to prevent them from sharing it. So there's a lot of work goes into keeping these sensitive records secure as possible. It's something that we take really seriously, and we do take as many steps as possible to ensure that nests and stuff like that are very secure. We have quite a good working relationship with Met Police to help with any criminal investigations into sensitive species and sites. And yeah, it's something that we've developed over our expertise to keep safe and keep secure and make sure there's no one going out and picking peregrine nests. Yeah, as I said previously, we'll answer the other questions on an email later. No, actually, this is really important. We'll just answer this one right now. We are interested in everything, literally everything. So I was talking at the Met Police's wildlife officer forum a couple of weeks ago, and a brilliant example I used was that we have currently 30,000 sparrowhawk records, but only 400 rat records. Now, I've not tagged every single sparrowhawk in London, but I'm assuming there's not more sparrowhawks than rats. Same with pigeons, we've only got a couple of hundred pigeon records. So, you know, the more representative our data set can be of what's out there, the better. So, you know, record everything from the most common species to the least. Just for everyone online, just saying Kieran was saying how the sparrow population is a great example, because without recording sparrows, we wouldn't know if they crashed. So yeah, just echoing the point, record everything, send it all to us, and hopefully we'll make better decisions going forward. So thank you for coming to the workshop, and thank you for coming to the day. I will let you all go now after a few short words from me. So before you're, thank you. Before you'll run off, I can see racing through the door, and before everyone just goes back to their days, I want to say thank you to all speakers. It's been a really interesting day, great variety of talks, and we're really grateful to have you all come and enrich us today. So thank you to